What's your favourite dinosaur and why?
Well, thanks for having me, Will, and it's an interesting first question. The only dinosaur I know is T-Rex, actually. You need to ask my grandson, who's an expert on dinosaurs.
Okay, thank you very much. So, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Leeds, and at about 2 weeks old, I went over the Pennines to Oldham, so I was brought up in Oldham, Greater Manchester.
And why are you living in High Peak now?
Well, I'm not living in High Peak now. I live in Cheshire, in a town called Middlewich, a sort of commuter town of about 14,000 people. I've had links with High Peak for all my life, really. I used to cycle from Oldham over the Snake Pass and around Ladybower, so I got to know it there, and I've liked walking. So I've been up Kinder Scout, I don't know how many times, over 20 anyway.
What were your first and your latest jobs?
Well, I'm a one sort of, I was trained as a medic and I qualified in Manchester. So my first job was at Manchester Royal Infirmary, and my last job was, actually I had progressed a bit, I was in Winchester, so they've all been in the NHS.
What experience and skills would you bring to the job as MP?
I would bring, I think, a lot of experience. I've always liked understanding how, ordinary people work. I had quite a privileged upbringing, but I don't know, I've always had, I always used to like going into pubs and just listening to people and sensing really what mood they were in and how they were talking, just watching what was going on. It's a bit strange really, isn't it? But that's how I relaxed. I bought a pint of shandy, sat down in the corner of a pub and just watched what was going on. So I've always liked people. I've always sort of felt that I owe a debt really to a lot of people in this country who I don't know, and the fact I'm sitting here before you is testament to that. And so I'd like to pay it back, and if I can do my bit by being elected to Parliament, then I'll be most grateful, and I'll do what I can. I have quite a lot of contacts through the years, and I'm quite a reasonable, I think, communicator, though my wife doesn't. And I think I would bring some strategy to some sort of cohesiveness. What we've lacked in the last decade or more is cohesiveness. This two-party system really is terrible, and if we could reform our voting system, that would be great. So that's would be one of my aims.
What standards do you expect from elected politicians?
Well, I'm a little bit strict here. I think that the public do demand higher standards from elected officials than they would of their peers. So I think MPs, it's a privilege to serve the public, I think, and if you take on that job, then I think you must accept with it some responsibility that your actions will be judged a little bit more highly than perhaps the ordinary person in the street. So that's my view.
What are your three favourite things about the High Peak?
Well, I must start with the hills, because as I've already alluded to, particularly Kinder Scout, I love the valleys and the walks and the tops. So when I was at Manchester University, we used to go on a Wednesday afternoon, was free, so we used to go get in a minivan and go to Hayfield and climb up Kinder. It was it added a bit of relaxation to what was quite a studious education. The other thing is, I think I like the people. I think they seem down-to-earth people to me. They don't have any pretences. They wear their heart on their sleeve, so to speak, and I prefer people like that. I'm a Yorkshireman, as you've already heard, and we tend to speak our minds, and I think Derbyshire people, they may be different, but I think overall, the Northerners, we do tend to speak our own minds about things. The third thing, I think, would be just the beauty of the one thing about the Peak District is that I always said that it seems greener, and I don't know whether it's minerals in the soil or whatever it is, but as soon as I get out of Cheshire and into Derbyshire, the fields and the hills seem greener. And I'm quite a visual person, so I quite enjoy the scenery, the ups and downs, the undulations. Cheshire's a bit flat for me, but so that's my third.
What are the top 3 problems in the High Peak right now?
Well, I suspect that the problems in the High Peak are not much different from the problems in much of the country. We have a terrible cost of living crisis. Public services are in decay after 15 years, I think it is, of Tory rule, and I think the health service too is the other thing. I think waiting lists is something I would want, being a medic. I understand the frustrations of waiting a couple of years for your hip replacement. It's just not on, and I would do what I can to. It's not an easy thing to solve, but it's something I would like to put my head into. Yeah.
How would you solve these problems?
Well, start with the waiting list. It's waiting list actually, if you think about it, it's a bit like a lake. You've got rivers flowing into it, and you've got a river flowing out of it, and it's what's there in the middle. So you can solve or modify waiting lists by either improving the outflow, in other words, having more hospital appointments, putting more resources into the NHS, or you can try and reduce the inflow, which means more preventative measures. I'm a great believer in public health, in good food, exercise, and a nourishing diet. They're all really useful, and that's how I do. I'm not on any drugs myself, and I don't want to be. I feel that with the right attitude and the right food and the right exercise, then you can possibly live. You can usually live to about 80, which is pretty good, really, isn't it?
And finally, why should we trust you?
Well, trust has to be earned, doesn't it, really? I think doctors on the whole are reasonably well trusted in the hierarchy of professions. I don't know why you should trust me. You'll have to work that out for yourself. I think I trust myself, and I suppose you could speak to people who know me. I don't. How can you answer that question properly? Why should we trust you? Well, I'm never really honestly told as I can realise. I probably have told a few lies, but I can't honestly remember. As a Yorkshireman, I feel straight talking is what I respect in people, so I respect it in myself. And actions, well, in a medical profession, if you decide to do something, particularly for a patient, then you do it. I mean, if you don't do it, you'll have nurses on your back and patients' relatives, all sorts of things. So I'm used to saying what I think and doing what I've said.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.